Hello, and we're back after a couple-week hiatus due to elections and due to post-election, whatever that was, hangover.
Post-election, yeah.
Post-election, and now tackling Ism, Schism, and Moral Hazard from the book that you should all know and love at this point, and should be ahead of us by now. More Equal Animals. How you doing today, gentlemen?
Good.
It's a fine day. It's a fine
Refreshed.
day. Ism, Schisms, and Moral Hazard.
So we're just gonna argue about political systems for like 2 hours, and then try to decide who pays the bill.
The caricature with the cows that explains all the different isms?
I don't know. We should have had that up as a visual aid, probably.
Yeah, sorry. Just Google. Yeah, you're gonna find it. It's really nice.
Political.
Yeah, you have a farmer with a cow, and then it has a small title, and it says I don't know, maybe socialism, and they say they take your cow and they milk it and they give you milk, how much you need or want. And then Marxism, they take the cow, they slaughter it, and they charge you for processing it for you. And it's they ridicule all the different isms.
Wow, I see it
in a very short.
This one's pretty long. This one's pretty long. Like fascism, you have 2 cows. The government takes both, hires you to take care of them, and sells you the milk.
Yeah. It's each one is ridiculed in a different way. It's like, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah.
It's very quick.
So,
Ism, Schism.
Yeah. I'll read that opening quote because it's a nice quote from John Dewey. For in spite of itself, any movement that thinks and acts in terms of an ism becomes so involved in reaction against other isms that it is unwittingly controlled by them. For it then forms its principles by reaction against them instead of by a comprehensive constructive survey of actual needs, problems, and possibilities. John Dewey. Let that be a warning to us all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Open mind. Ism, Schism. So the first part I highlighted here, most people are so focused on how stuff is allocated, they ignore how power is allocated in reality. They choose not to give their power to people who promise to use the resulting concentration of power to give them more stuff. I find that interesting. Because that's everywhere, right? Giving up their power for stuff. Meanwhile, what about the kids? I spent many conversations with my younger toddler children fighting over things. Things don't matter. People matter. Your relationship matters. Took a while. Right. There's definitely a human thing with stuff.
And yeah, people fight over stuff because they see what's in front of them right now. But you can grow stuff. You can make the cake instead of thinking about how to divide it. You can grow it and make it bigger for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes time and effort. And if you want immediate satisfaction, reward, then you don't have patience for that.
Yeah.
I'm messaging with Manfredi real quick.
Okay. Moving along. Feel free to stop me anytime. I didn't highlight a lot in these 2 chapters, so there's going to be.
I thought it was worth highlighting Dan's voluntarism perspective.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I just had to send that message to Mike. Dan says, if he had to pick a single ism that most closely reflects his stance, it would be voluntarism. It means I support any form of community organization which has the consent of the governed demonstrated by the right of secession.
I'm not sure that actually explains voluntarism completely. I think there's more to it. The way I see voluntarism, I really like that, but I think it should be extended or elaborated more. And I see voluntarism as something you can subscribe to once you're independent enough. And independence is a scale. It's not a binary thing. It's not like you're dependent or independent. You can be more independent. And when you're independent enough, you have the freedom to decide that you want to volunteer to something outside of your immediate work, duties, family, whatever, chores, and you want to invest in something outside of your immediate circle of reaction and reward. So I'm not going to work extra hours at work because that doesn't make sense, and I don't need all that extra cash. I'm going to invest my time and effort and coding knowledge to do something else, and like karma, or doing something and not expecting anything in return immediately, and knowing that somebody can take that to the next step. And I like this open-ended market. So it's not like you give something and you expect something in return immediately, but no, let it be out there. That's how I see voluntarism.
If everyone had that same view, it'd be great. It just takes one greedy prick to throw that whole thing out the window, though.
That's one way of looking at it. But another way is to say, well, not everybody is lucky, and not everybody has that luxury of saying, oh, you know what, I don't have to work overtime. Some people do have to work overtime, and you don't have to think of them as just greedy pricks. Maybe they're unlucky, or
no, I know. I just mean if everyone was giving things in a karmic way and hope they get it in return, the greedy person will just keep taking and never give it back.
See, I view it way more pragmatically than like as some utopian sort of like ideal. I think voluntarism is just voluntary organization in absent coercion. And it's not that, you, as a voluntarist, you can't coexist in a system that is not voluntarist, like the world that we currently live in. Yeah, and when within the context of a voluntarist community, it's just like you all kind of agree not to coerce each other into whatever. Everything you do is voluntary, based on consent, and it's like consensual governance. I mean, it's a good descriptor for what we're doing with Eden. And then the right of secession kind of implies that you're independent, because you can't really secede if you're not independent enough to secede. So, yeah.
He doesn't go into voluntarism as an actual bolded topic in this section.
Well,
I think we spoke about it.
Yeah. And, I think Dan anticipated that he was going to be like roasted for, from every conceivable angle from writing this book, because, at times it seems pro-socialism, and at times it seems pro-capitalism, and at times it seems pro-libertarian or whatever. And so he knew everyone was going to be like, hey, this doesn't fit into my ism.
Exactly. I got that reaction from a friend that I gave him the book. He said, that's a really bad book. It's about socialism. And I said, are you sure you read the book? He's socialist.
Yeah. I mean, this. Yeah. So. Yeah. I don't know how we want to tackle this chapter. I don't see this. I think we could summarize a lot of this chapter, like without going into each different ism.
Yes.
Unless you guys want to.
There's no point if the desired outcome is to like condense the major concept in this book. I don't think we really need to have.
I think we can skip ahead to the wealth distribution histogram, because I think this is a very interesting, very important concept, where you say there's always inequality between people, and some of it is just luck, like the cards you were dealt when you were born, and you were the environment you were growing into, and the schooling you had, and that's how it is. You're never going to have a perfectly balanced society where everybody is exactly the same income level and the same houses, and it's not possible. But if you look at the distribution, you want the super rich and the super poor not to be too far apart, and you don't want the extreme to be too separated. And you see in the chart that in the different isms you have different wealth distributions. So which is which? Communism, capitalism, and socialism.
Communism is this one.
Okay, so capitalism is the most is the better distribution with so the poor are not so bad off, and the wealthy are wealthier than the wealthiest in the other isms. Is that the right way to describe what we see in this chart?
Yep. It's a better distribution in capitalism. Yeah.
I mean, and I know, like, now people listening to this are freak the hell out. What are you saying? It's just
not politically correct, anything, right, of what we're talking about. It's like a minefield.
And it's like the part I have highlighted is what those people have to keep in mind. This book is about making people more equal in power and letting wealth fall. Okay, so this book doesn't attempt to try to solve wealth distribution disparity. It's just trying to solve power distribution disparity. And if we had more power individually, it's reasonable to assume you could acquire more wealth, or keep the wealth that you currently have, or pass it on to future generations and aggregate wealth that way,
or coordinate with others in a group to form whatever socialist utopia you want to.
Sure.
You just can't you can't use your socialist utopia to dominate the rest of the world and make everyone do your bidding. Like
right.
So
there was actually two bits that I highlighted before we got there, though. Governments are communistic control of people because they can regulate anything at any time. So that was like basically kind of like a truism outside. And the very purpose, again, this question that comes up over and over, what's the purpose of government? The very purpose of government is to resolve disputes with respect to property, which means that government is ultimately in control of all property.
Say that last line again.
The very purpose of government is to resolve disputes with respect to property, which means that government is ultimately in control of all property.
That's interesting, because some people say that if you're in control of something, then you own it. There's no other meaning of owning some property other than controlling it. So you can give a title to somebody and say, it's okay, you own your piece of land, but if you're the government and you can take that away from them whenever you want, meaning you're in control, then you actually own it.
Yeah.
On the bottom of the next page, he kind of elaborates on that more under when it says, it could be said that communism is the natural result of extreme concentration of power. Any ism that allows concentration of power will eventually attempt to use that power to evolve toward communism as a means to further concentrate power. Ironically, with concentrated power comes concentrated wealth, as there is little practical difference between control and wealth, because property is commonly defined as the right of exclusive control. Under communism, the people become the private property and wealth of the rulers. There's little difference between communism and slavery. Historically, no communist ruling classes subject themselves to the same rules as the people. It isn't even technically possible to do so. What was that? Really harsh?
It's hard. Yeah, I want to, say la 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 la. I can't hear you.
I know.
You read that part.
I know.
It's really
well,
bad.
It's like I'd be happy to live in a commune with, with friends that, I think when we idealize the idea of communism, we lose the historical nuance of what that attempt always turns into.
In a small scale, it can work.
In a small scale, yeah. It can work if you've got the right system and philosophy.
And the right group of people. And if somebody joins it and poisons the atmosphere, you can secede.
Right.
But when you have it as a country, there's no way to escape.
Yep. Yeah.
What were you stirring there?
My cowbell. No, just kidding. It's a insulated mug with hot chocolate in it.
Hot chocolate. Right.
Don't mind while I just glug down some hot chocolate.
Get it while it's hot.
Well, it's insulated, so it just stays hot. Anyway, yeah, this is just like a minefield of isms that, like,
yeah.
That's a good point, right? He says it somewhere in here, but ultimately, any of these take from the rich and give to the poor, or take from the few and give to the many. Any of those examples are most of these isms. The problem is if people could secede, which is a main tenet of independence in this book, is the ability to leave. Any sane rich person would leave. So they would just all leave. So those systems would ultimately all fail, because you wouldn't have anyone to take from, because they'd all have walked out the door and no thanks, I don't want to participate, you're just going to take all my shit.
Hey, where is that? That's a great
yeah, I don't know where he says it exactly.
I read that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, we should.
I apologize to anyone that's watching this right now. I just like.
Oh yeah, he says it here basically. So, half population in the the half of the population living in relative poverty are often under the belief that if the rich would just share, then they could improve their standard of living.
Just a little bit.
All they succeed in doing is bringing almost everyone down into poverty except the ruling class. Oh, okay, so that's not what I was saying.
No, there's another thing where it's like really clear. It's a really great statement. But I don't know where it went.
Yeah. Capitalism.
I thought it was nice. He says, I am opposed to universalism, the belief that everyone must be governed by the same principles. I think that's worth some serious contemplation. And that pretty much covers this whole. It's like, in a sense, we're not opposed to anarchism, communism, socialism, capitalism, libertarianism, whatever. Just don't tell anybody else how to live.
Yeah.
You know, just don't force anyone else into your system because you know best. You know what I mean? Like, that's when things get really gnarly. Just ask anyone that lived under Stalin.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not defending capitalism either. like the current system as we understand it, and mind you, like this is more like Mike's here, crony capitalism.
It's not even capitalism.
Right, it's like plutarchy.
It's capitalism in name only.
Yeah, it's like oligarchy is what we have now.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike. Welcome to the juicy bit.
Hey, Mike.
Howdy, guys.
We're just walking through the minefield of isms here, going, none of this matters. Let's move on to the next chapter.
Yeah, I think Dan in the beginning also apologizes, saying that these are his definitions and you can disagree, but at least let him describe them and tell you what he thinks is wrong with them and then move on. So he knew ahead of time that it's a dangerous, complicated chapter, but he had to have it there.
Oh, 100%. You guys just went through socialism. I did have a chunk highlighted there I found useful. Third paragraph, corporations and limited liability companies are a form of socialism. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They grant their owners limits of their liability, transferring the costs of that liability to the general population. Ironically, most socialists consider corporations to be creatures of capitalism. Corporate personhood is a means of privatizing the profits and socializing the losses.
Yep.
That was very non-obvious to me when I read this book. Pretty cool idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that this morning when I was going through this, but then I lost it. Yeah, there are all sorts of things like that in society where, you know, we think that we live in this capitalist society, but there's tons of structures that we use that socialize losses for banks, for whomever, and yet it's seen as this predominantly capitalistic enterprise. There's also a great little section that I just highlighted. I can find my way back to it again.
This is probably worth highlighting too. All governments are inherently socialist organizations because they take from the many and give to the few.
And then we gotta highlight the part that the book title comes from on the top of page 99, second paragraph of 99. He's talking about George Orwell's Animal Farm, in which the animals attempt to establish communism and declare all animals are equal. Eventually, the pigs take over the farm and start to live like the farmer. They overthrew, the outcome being that the animal constitution was reinterpreted to all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The animals had hoped to form a society where everyone was equal, but the statement that some animals are, quote, more equal than others exposes a contradiction in the highest law of the land. How can everyone be equal if some are more equal?
Yeah, they say that paper suffers illogic sentences because it's just ink on paper. It doesn't care, and you can take the meaning out of the words. What does it mean to be more equal? That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and here he kind of draws the parallel. In the case of Animal Farm and our society today, we are all presumed to be equal under the law and have no equal power. But in practice, we know this is far from reality. Everybody knows that that's not the case. money buys you better lawyers, buys you freedom, essentially, or lobbyists. They write the laws in the end to suit special interests, not to suit everyone equally.
Yeah, but it can't buy me love.
You'll have to rent it.
Definitely.
You could take it.
The top of the democratism section is also a great summary of the whole thing. This book is about true democracy, which I submit as the voluntary process by which a group of people or group of organizations reach consensus so that the members of the group can act as one and resolve disputes without taking power from the people. Democracy is government derived from the ongoing consent of people as demonstrated by the right of secession. That's like the whole design principle of fractal democracy.
Yeah.
It's hard not to read secession as succession. I do that all the time.
And then the first sentence of the last paragraph is like the supplementary sentence. True democracy is about coordinating with other people while maintaining personal autonomy and power. There's another of your t-shirts, I think.
Yeah. That's a good one-liner for sure.
Yeah, I like this one above it too. The key is that people consent to the process and then abide by the outcome. Because we're never always going to get what we individually want, surely. We're always going to have difference of opinions. That's why it's not 100%, it's a supermajority. Because there's always going to be people who don't necessarily agree on it. But if you can agree on the process, that is fair, then you don't need to leave. You don't need to secede after an outcome goes against your perspective or your favor.
But if you do, you can.
But you can, yeah. That's right.
If it's just so reprehensible, whatever the decision was, that you cannot live with it, then yeah.
But if the process that led to the decision was fair and reasonable, then could it be? I mean, it's like, is everyone else the problem or are you the problem here?
Well, think of the two wolves and the sheep that have to decide on what's for lunch.
Yeah.
Are you the problem? Are you sure you want to secede? We're having lamb chops today.
Yeah. All right, should we dive into moral hazard? Did we flog isms and schisms enough?
I don't have ketchup on my book.
Right? I'm making mine look pretty.
What is that?
I'll offer my
Mine
thesis since
mine is black and white.
since I wasn't here at the beginning to offer this. I'll offer my thesis at the end.
Oh, please do.
What you don't know about your isms is the key to this chapter. False claims, common attributes of authoritarian governance, impact on Pareto distributions of wealth and power are the keys to this chapter. Forced decentralization of wealth concentrates power and de facto wealth. I adjusted for a whole lot of not full sentences in that, but hopefully that came across.
Yeah, that was good.
And I would add to that at this point that somebody just said this earlier, man, the definitions of these words, you get into a conversation with someone about this and the definitions of these words becomes critical and definitely differs.
It's a minefield.
Yeah, and then it's like two deaf people arguing about two different things because they don't know that they don't agree on the definitions. So it's meaningless.
Words matter.
Yeah.
It might be worth mentioning at the beginning, back to like words matter. At the beginning, he says, while being fundamentally voluntarist, I make arguments from first principles to persuade people to voluntarily adopt systems commonly considered communist, socialist, and capitalist. And then he's like, this chapter will explain how I resolve these disputes. Yeah. It's like, seriously, whenever if you sit down with me for lunch, on a Tuesday, I might seem like a communist. And on a Wednesday, I might seem like a capitalist. And on a Thursday, I might seem like a communist. Just, you never know. Depends what we're talking about and what the context is, the situation, One of my favorite quotes of all time, if I can remember it right now, is my brain. What is it? Yeah, my brain is. My brain is socialist. My heart is anarchist, and my blood is revolutionary. Something
I was waiting for your. Okay, never mind.
Or yeah, my brain. You can adjust depending on your own ism schism. There's more to it than that. I butchered that quote, but anyway, that's like
moral hazard.
Bottom line.
The study of economic and game theory by having lunch at a restaurant with a large group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's how this chapter goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I highlighted this as one that I thought was good. One of the greatest signs of moral hazard is when one person chooses and another person pays.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of just kind of example building in this chapter, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to summarize it.
Yeah, I reference that all the time. It's such a simple indicator. It's not the whole picture, but it's a huge portion of the picture and an indicator that's almost always there.
It's Mike's bookshelf talking.
I was participating in this rich business guy lunches, and he would have his guests. He would say, "Oh, just order whatever you want." He would make it a party, but it was actually business deals, and it was interesting to see how it was really important for him to pay and tell everybody that he is paying, and they should eat as much as they want and have fun and enjoy it for several hours. And it affects people in a subtle way during the discussion. And he did that repeatedly with different people, and he got different reactions, but they all eventually succumbed to this. Okay, we're going to have fun. We're going to eat. It's like a very small thing, but it changes the balance of the way people interact.
Which isn't to say you can't have a feast and not feel guilty about it and not put like anybody, in a position of moral hazard.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it's like done, yeah, it gets tricky, especially when people are using that sort of thing in order to curry favor with people. But anyway, do we want to go over the restaurant? Let's see.
Yes.
I think it's such a great, and this is like, if we were making a documentary, this scene has to be in the documentary, a la The Big Short, the way they explain synthetic assets with the gambling scene. With I can't remember who it is. It's like, I don't know. It's too famous. It's a famous actress, and they're placing bets at a blackjack table. I would love to see this dramatized in
a restaurant,
in an actual restaurant scene, with some narrator over the background.
Which section do you want to? Which example? Because there's a few meal examples.
Well, he starts off on page 108, I believe, with a similar process occurs if you go out to dinner with a large group of friends and agree to split the check evenly. Everyone who orders a meal above the average cost benefits, and everyone else loses. The temptation is to order more than average. This temptation is made worse when you realize everyone is tempted to order more than normal. Things get even worse if the group is a random set of strangers who may never share a meal together again. The tendency is for the group to spend far more than the average of what they would have spent if everyone paid for their own meal. I mean, I could just keep going. It's such a good... I mean, this is like the nub of the whole thing. Now imagine you and your friends get together for dinner every week, and the same people always order the most expensive meals. One of two things will happen. Those ordering cheaper meals will stop attending, or the group will stop inviting those who order more expensive meals. With multiple iterations, reputation, and voluntary membership, the moral hazard is greatly reduced. Without multiple iterations, reputation doesn't have time to be discovered. Without voluntary membership or exclusion, there is no way to counteract abuse. Imagine everyone was required to attend the meal and pay their equal share. At the first meal, some people may be more economical in their choices and others more spendthrift. After observing the outcome of the first meal, the economical parties will become more spendthrift on the second meal so that they get their, quote, fair share and don't feel like they are subsidizing others. This raises the average cost on the second meal. The third meal will be even worse. This process will continue until everyone orders whatever they want or until some members are unable to afford the bill.
We should get into the restaurant business. I think that's who actually profits from this, right?
Well, he makes the case if restaurants made it so that you just had to split the check, then
they encourage that.
Yeah. Once some members are unable to afford the bill, the temptation is to ask others to pick up the tab. If the group agrees to divide the bill according to each member's ability to pay, then the moral hazard continues to drive up consumption until there's nothing left to consume, or even the most well-off are unable to pay. While some members of the group may speak up and say this is wasteful, they are trapped with a choice between subsidizing everyone else or getting their, quote, fair share. For every dollar they reduce their consumption, they only reduce their share of the bill by pennies. The larger the group, the greater the moral hazard. Yeah, I mean,
welcome to government.
Well,
yeah.
I think the other thing here are Dan's eloquent in how he says a lot of this stuff and constructs these examples. But I think as I talk to people, a lot of people hope better, right? Wish better for human beings. Well, I don't think everyone would do that. I think people are generally good people. And while I don't agree with that, I don't disagree with that statement. All you need is one person to show up and spend more than other people, and that starts this whole decay.
I'll take a filet mignon and a martini, and then everyone else is like, oh, yeah.
Right? It's completely natural, and even if you don't match the extreme, maybe you raise it a little bit, or maybe you raise it just to get your fair share, like he says, rather than any other motivation. It's not immoral. It's just this social group dynamic that it's just going to happen. And I would also acknowledge, I think in today's society, we're actually really bad at saying, you can't come anymore. You broke the rules. We're so much about inclusivity that we don't call out the bad behavior and maintain the integrity of the group.
Yeah.
It's a very uncomfortable conversation for us.
Well, that's just Joe. He always does that. Exactly. Trust me, I live in Minnesota. I know all about uncomfortable group dynamics. Most people I don't think have an appreciation for how subject to like game theory their lives are. You know, they think, oh, my friends would never blah, 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 or like, I know better, or people overestimate themselves and their capacity to avoid really well-established, pitfalls.
Yeah, this is basic sociology, right? If anyone hasn't studied a little bit of sociology, go read basic sociology. I know my response, along with everyone else I've ever asked, is you read about a few experiments, a few examples, and you say, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, what the science is telling you is you would do that.
Yep.
You know, there are some exceptions, but they're extremely rare. You get sucked into group dynamics without even knowing it.
Danny's got it right here. He would just secede.
Yep.
I would decline joining the group.
Yep.
Well, to take another example of moral hazard, I think this is probably an example of moral hazard from sociology. First thing I ever learned in sociology. There's like a case of someone being assaulted in a courtyard of like a huge apartment complex, and they're screaming for help and they're being assaulted. No one calls the police because everyone thought someone else was calling the police. Everyone thought someone else is going to do it. I don't need to do it. And so there was no one came to the rescue. It's kind of like the inverse problem in a way, but it's the same basic idea. It's like you think, oh, you would be different, but
yeah, there can be reasoning involved that is completely understandable once you've been through it, once you thought about it. But yeah, leads to those outcomes.
I think we should go deeper. And oh yeah, it's right in front of me. So you try to make it better by splitting the 100 members. Instead of having just one meal for all of them, you split them to 10 tables of 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe the rich guys are going to be in one table and the poor guys are going to be in another table. So it's going to be okay, right? Somebody want to read this paragraph?
Sure. But people may choose to sit at any table. The consequence of this setup is that the economical members will pick one table, and the spendthrifts will be shunned from most tables and forced to dine together. People would tend to group according to the amount they feel is economical for them to personally spend. Each group may even reach consensus to place a cap on how much any one person can spend. These caps would operate like an employer giving you a per diem food budget while you travel. Each person's spending will approach the limit as they either use it or lose it. So while limits may prevent runaway consumption, they do not encourage economical choices. What is more, these limits artificially force some people to live below their means.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not really a solution to anything here. And if you imagine this happening on a repeated basis, then these groups might gradually up the limit, agree to up the limit from week to week. And the dynamics is bad. It might be delayed. It might not be as extreme as the 100 people sharing the meal, but it doesn't really solve anything. It's like treating the symptom, not treating the problem.
I like this, which is just after what you read there. While allowing people to group helps reduce waste. Waste can further be reduced by enabling more groups, which means smaller groups, with the limit being everyone pays for their own meal. A group of people going out to eat is most economical when people pay their own way.
When you say the limit being everyone pays their own bill, you mean every individual?
Is a group of one, that's right.
Okay.
Which has always been my preference. I've always hated going out to eat with other people when you share the cost. When I was young, I mean, now charity, and if I had a better job than the people, then I enjoyed being charitable in that.
Yeah.
Way. But when I was a university student,
Yeah.
we were going Dutch. I think that was the term, right? Where the waitress comes, individual tabs.
No, Dutch is splitting it 50-50, isn't it? Anyway.
I don't even know.
Sorry,
maybe
Dutch people.
Maybe it is each paying their own. I don't know. Fuck. Anyway. Yeah, I apologize to the Dutch as well.
That's gotta be a crazy thing that we made up. I gotta look at the origin of that phrase.
Going. The Dutch are like, disgusting.
Damn these.
Exactly. I bet exactly. Exactly as Dutch as Belgian waffles.
Yeah,
there's a Dutch auction thing, where they have a different dynamics.
Oh, I heard of that. A reverse Dutch auction.
That's an actual thing.
Going Dutch means that every person in a group of diners or imbibers pays for themselves. Going Dutch appears to come from a 19th century Americanism, of course. A Dutch treat or Dutch lunch supper, which also refers to each person paying their own way in a meal. I love how we just like casually appropriate other cultures and like, oh, that's going Dutch. I know because I'm American.
Are you reading Wikipedia?
I was reading the first thing that came up on Google.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what it means. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then right when costs are shared, people start spending other people's money, and costs spiral up and out of control due to moral hazard.
That's fun.
So we can infer that the Americans thought that the Dutch had solved the problem of moral hazard. Yeah.
Yes, it was a compliment.
It was a compliment, exactly.
It was a compliment. Yeah.
Okay, insurance. Anyone?
Insurance. I'm already on 111 with insurance, but if you guys got stuff in between, go ahead.
Just dazed on my highlighting.
Got to stop using that hypnotic green color. Yeah, jump in, Mike. I think you've probably got unless you were about to say something, Chris.
No, I have a comment of my highlighter in my mouse. I have a different mouse than previous shows, so I don't smooth with my straight lines. In case anyone's noticing.
Top of 111. To prevent this self-sorting, and I don't know, I guess I'm skipping what he means by self-sorting here. The presence of deductibles and copays causes people to self-sort into low-risk and high-risk pools. Someone who must pay for half their medical bills has more incentive to reduce costs than someone who only has to pay for 1% of the bills. To prevent this self-sorting, which would cause premiums to spike for the sickly, insurance companies force people to group by other means, such as a common employer. So you're basically put at the table with the person spending a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And this one in particular, I think, is incredibly pervasive in this country. I don't remember the last time I've used insurance to cover a medical bill. So when I talk to people about alternative approaches and doctors I go to, but I pay out of pocket, the first question is, do they take insurance? And that's a variant of this where are you more interested in your health? Or are you more interested in what insurance covers? Because if what insurance covers is now being impacted by these kinds of decisions, well, do we know that the insurance will be covering the right things? And do you want to make your decisions based on that? I think these grouping by employer, that's a perfect one, right? We all know that scenario because that's how that goes. Here's your employer package. Very interesting to consider, very real world example.
Yeah, that's a pervasive trap, I would think. Like, there are a lot of healing modalities that are not covered by insurance, but are they? Like, what was the process by which we decided that they were not favorable healing modalities,
Well, it'd be interesting too, right? For certain, especially disorders, if you can measure, let's just use blood work, right? If you can measure some levels in blood that show the disorder, and you can go get it treated and show blood work wise that disorder is gone, why would we not cover that? Especially if you were willing to like front the costs. It's weird. It's weird how the system works.
Yeah, because they got to have providers that buy into the system. and
Sorry,
they have to be from a pre-selected group of yeah. I know you
I've turned
know
us
the
on a
answer to this.
tangent a little bit.
I mean,
Yeah.
how does healthcare work in Israel? Do you have universal healthcare? Like in Canada, like I know,
It's a socialist system. Yeah, we have 4 major health insurance companies, but they're actually nationalized, and they all are equal, and they have the same low minimum service. You can buy additional health insurance, and people do that because they know that the minimum is not good enough. I am. I'm really interested in health, and I read a lot about supplements and natural ways to improve my health. And I hope I never need any of their services. No, thank you.
Right. That's even different than Canada, because here it's all covered really for the most part. Dental is different. That's not covered. But in terms of going to the hospital,
It's so funny.
it doesn't matter what's wrong with you. They're gonna look at you.
Yeah, dental is pretty new. It's only a few years part of the free healthcare, but I still go to my private dentist when I need them, and luckily I only go clean my teeth from every 6 months. I don't have any cavities.
It's really that's so weird to me, and this is another huge tangent, but like it was wading into my domain here a little bit. But like in terms of longevity, number of years on the earth that you have, good oral hygiene is, I think, perhaps the number one predictor of long life, right up there with caloric restriction. And if a government was subsidizing healthcare, why would they omit dentistry and like good dental care? Since it's like, I mean, I don't think this is a controversial idea. I think there's like a huge body of information out there that better oral hygiene leads to like long, healthy lives. I think it's on average. I think it adds like 7 years to your life, which is crazy. Nothing else adds that much.
Did you say it's not controversial and then start providing data? Do you not hear yourself?
Well, yeah. That's all anecdotally. That's all I could throw at you without like citing a particular study. But
it's just gonna make it worse.
I know.
It's all about just having an opinion. There's no data allowed.
No data.
Come on, Lovejoy.
Here's a good one for moral hazard in healthcare, right? So gastric bypass surgery is free in Canada. So the moral I can get as fat as I want. I can just blah blah blah, just eat to it and just become and there's no, and it's like that's okay because later I can get a surgery to make.
It's even worse. No, it's even worse. It's also a part of the covered free service you get in Israel, but you have to be obese at a certain level, and if you're not at that level and you want that surgery, then it encourages people to get fatter, just to get that, to be eligible to this free service.
Isn't that crazy?
It's really bad.
It's asinine.
And people know that, but still they eat more to get to that level.
It'd be cheaper to just build vomitoriums like they had in Rome, where you could gorge on all the food you want, and then you just go to the vomitorium and puke it all up again. It's like we'd be better off promoting bulimia than obesity.
Yeah, there was a very nice restaurant in Jerusalem that had a vomitorium.
Oh, really?
You're kidding.
Yeah.
They deliberately they make it so it's convenient and comfortable to throw up after.
It was just a joke, but it was a Roman theme in Jerusalem.
That was a practice in ancient Rome.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where they figured out a throat to like really get it up to really hurt.
Yeah,
you can continue the party.
Yeah, eat as much as you want, get really full and satiated, and then go to the vomitorium and puke it all out so that you can go back and drink and eat more.
Yeah, you can. You don't have to go home and feel nauseated.
Yeah, and then get a gastric bypass. You can avoid the gastric bypass. Anyway, we've way gone off the range now, but
you know, these stories of history and even just the current gastric bypass moral hazard. It's like anybody who thinks humans are we're just this perfect mystical being that, you know, is like, that's so whacked. Oh my god.
Chris, what are you talking about? We got it all figured out. Science. Come on.
Science.
Science says we're ridiculous.
Have you seen the movie Wall-E?
Oh,
This cute robot.
Love that
That's
movie.
a great movie.
So
Good.
the last thing there is about this really fat civilization of people on a spaceship waiting to re-inhabit the Earth.
They're all in
And
their
they're all so
pods.
fat. Yeah, they're all on electric wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Actually, they can't move.
We're totally headed there.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Okay, that was some good moral hazard anecdotal stories. What else do we got?
So last page, last thing I have highlighted is, furthermore, it's the middle of the second to last paragraph. Furthermore, voluntary membership and ability to exclude from groups is key to leveraging reputation to mitigate moral hazard. True democracy structures itself to counteract moral hazard as much as possible.
Where was that?
Second or third sentence of the second to last paragraph. Page 113.
113, thank you.
49%, see that right under the green.
Right, okay, you're here.
Furthermore, yeah, voluntary membership and ability to exclude.
You're exclusionary.
Which again, yeah, it's very counterintuitive for how we think today. But that's critical to this process. There has to be consequences for has to be consequences.
One of the biggest services we're doing to kids is giving them all a prize just for showing up.
We were just talking about that the other day with reference to sortition in the classroom. I was like, but if you don't use sortition, I mean, if you use sortition, then it's kind of like in the final round, if you did, fractal democracy in the classroom and you did sortition on the final round, then it's kind of like everyone wins. Because, it was just random. It wasn't based on merit that the last child was chosen as like the head chief delegate. So you can
How
avoid.
many people do you have in a classroom?
Well, like we were using the number 24 as an average. So
it's pretty small.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is
Chris.
Yeah.
This is a total tangent, but Chris was kind of arguing against sortition in the final round for the children in that context and in small scale. And I thought, yeah, that makes sense because
it's too small. Yeah, it's very small.
It's the idea that I keep going back to where when I worked in renewables, I worked for General Electric, and they would I was in a wind farm in eastern Quebec in mountains and snow, and like you needed a big snow groomer to get up to the turbine. And they meanwhile wanted to apply how you run a wind site to be the same there as it is in Texas. And it's like, you cannot apply the cookie cutter approach to this methodology. You need to account for nuance. So for me, sortition is to say it applies to every single example of political playoffs and fractal democracy is wrong. You need to consider nuance, and the situations they're not all identical, and therefore sortition doesn't always make sense. That was sort of the point.
Well, and Chris, if I understand your objection from that time, it always serves the purpose of avoiding overfitting the curve. But I think your argument at that point was that it doesn't, when the group is too small, you don't have sufficient number of best leaders, and so sortition doesn't give you as high a likelihood as a larger population. Was that the gist of your argument?
That's one of them. The more layers you have, the more reasonable it is to allow sortition to pick the final winner. That's one of them as well. But it's also just, does it matter? Like the idea of fitting the perfect curve, does it solve for the perfect outcome? In picking a student representative from a children's classroom, I don't think we need to get too picky and hung up on what that is. Like, it's just picking for a good consensus builder and a good representative of the class. That is that's close enough, I think. Like,
Hypothetically, though, what we're doing, and I'm going to say hypothetically like 15 times in this sentence, hypothetically, what we're doing when we teach young people is we're teaching them the model of what's actually out there. We're teaching them this is important, right? So you would want to include sortition if sortition is going to be part of the regular process. It's more important to teach them the process than get the best outcome.
But it is interesting, like, at what scale is sortition optimal? That's the question. If the stated goal of sortition is like you say, addressing the problem of overfitting or stopping incumbent advantage, like, at what scale does that become a meaningful problem to solve? You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to have incumbent advantage in a high school. You're just not. There's just you only play the game once with that senior class or whatever, and then that's it. Like, they don't get to come back again and again, like year after year, and curry favor with the teachers and get in positions of power. So it's like a hammer for like a screw or something. It's like not.
Well, but again, high school would be an extreme scenario, right? And I would say more to educate about the real world. In a small town, you're definitely going to have incumbent advantage, right? It doesn't take that many people to end up with an incumbent advantage.
What does incumbent advantage even mean if not? Because I always figured incumbent advantage is the ability for the incumbent to manipulate the rules to then further guarantee their ability to remain as the incumbent. But to me, that's about rule changing. And so if the incumbent is just more popular, then this doesn't, so what? Like, that's not a bad thing. If popularity is a byproduct of reputation and trust, then so be it. But if they can change the rules to make it so they win via gerrymandering, okay, fine. Incumbent advantage has a problem. But
rules, but wealth and influence play into that as well. They don't need to change the rules if they have enough money to run campaigns all day long, or have the influence to get the right people to run campaigns or spread the word or whatever.
I think in a classroom, you have this artificial setup where you separate it. You don't have any meaningful budget, so you're doing the democracy part, like the election, but you don't have any budget to match that with the people that got elected. And maybe if you want to make it more real life, so they actually get something out of it, and like a life lesson, maybe start that at the lower tier, like not at the last year of high school, and then they have another chance or two other chances when they come back after the summer vacation to redo it, and maybe do it across the whole school and not just one class, so you have more kids and you randomly group them, so it's not like they're a natural group of friends from their classroom, but they can be in a group with people above them and below them and different classes. It's a larger effort. It's not like an intimate class practice, and it might be too much to do for a teacher. I don't know.
The point Mike made that got through to me in this round, and this is like bonus round for anyone that's watching. It's like we just dove right into sortition. But the point that Mike made, which I thought was kind of interesting, is like even in a high school class, which maybe sortition doesn't matter as much for that particular outcome, it's still maybe the right thing to teach them, to have them use sortition, because in every other system, as it scales, like, it will be meaningful. And to me, like, then the challenge is like, how do you illustrate that to a bunch of high schoolers? Like give some of them like a really unfair advantage and intentionally, like,
what's the most important thing if we were to take all of Dan's book and all of this idea of fractal democracy and true democracy? What's the most important thing, or the top three things? Is sortition? That is the main thing to take away here is, hey, everybody, just remember this: randomly pick your winner.
No, but that's a function of randomness. Like randomness is one of the most important things from the book.
But it's not. It's not randomness of the winner. It's randomness of the population.
There are two randomnesses
Right?
in this process. One is the grouping of the people in the small groups on each round, and then at the final round you have another arbitrary chosen leader, because if you have a deep enough pyramid, then you have enough filters for good consensus building people, and then everybody who got to the board level to the last round is good enough, and you don't want to over optimize and actually make them pick the leader because you don't care. They're all good.
I'm gonna do a shameless plug do a little PSA here for studying history. Sortition was considered a critical part of democratic processes in ancient Greece. So I think we should go find out why they said that, because I definitely don't know enough to say.
I think it's a cool process. I mean,
me too.
Especially if there's enough depth, and that you've bubbled up enough people that are like, the analogy I used with when I was talking to Chris the other day is like the election we just had. No question, it produced like a competent group of chief delegates from which to select a head chief delegate. However, that being said, I think that if we'd had one more round deep, instead of having the group you have now, which is there, we're all competent in our own ways, but we're more specialists. I think you might get like another caliber of people that's a lot more like a CEO type person. It'd be like a group of CEOs in that next round, and from them choosing randomly would be like super optimal, like more optimal than choosing randomly from our group, because frankly, like had I been chosen, like I'm not sure I would have been the best person for that role. And maybe like it's not about choosing the best person for the role, but choosing among. But I think there'd be like less deviation in skill sets, like at a certain depth. So it's like I think sortition is more powerful when you've got a certain depth to the tree that you're working with.
Well, and just using the term CEO, you're fitting for something other than consensus already.
No, I just mean like a person that is, got executive functions that are, able to like, not a CEO in the traditional corporate
organization skills would be.
Like a supremely good organizer, like jack of all, that can like really, I mean, I don't know. We're all like, everyone in that group is really good in their own, way. But I want to see like what it looks like at one more round above that. Is all I'm saying. And it's just like no question that like the more rounds deep you go, the more like high quality people you're going to end up with. The more high reputation, high trust people you're going to end up with. And I aspire to be such a person.
It's going to happen soon. We're going to have deeper rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm sure that if you get elected, then the board will support you and help you succeed, because it's in everybody's interest that this actually works.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ami, you're my advisor, right? Because
I voted for you. Yeah.
You voted for me. Yeah.
I'm here to help you.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other cool thing about the process is that it allows us to leverage those groups of people that helped put us where we are. Whatever level you ended up at, you've got like this mastermind group of people around you that can kind of help fill in the gaps. So maybe you don't need to be the CEO type person if you're the type of person that can coordinate with all those other individuals.
Just call us on a meeting and we can discuss whatever you want.
Yeah.
I want to back to the book here. There was a couple spots I thought were good maybe mention Upton Sinclair's famous quote: "It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it."
Man,
I know tons of people like that who
that's brutal.
who do stuff, who have jobs that I can't. I just like, why? Why do you know it's wrong? Like, you know
It's
what
like-
you're doing is wrong, but
That's like all of society right now.
yeah.
Everybody does local optimization around them, and they don't care about anything else. They can't afford to think about something outside of their local minimum.
Yeah.
Mike, are you reading about Athenian democracy right now?
Yes.
So let me read this last part. This is the end of the book, of the chapter here. So I'll just read this part because I thought this was good too. Everyone working in government jobs is subject to moral hazard because they are spending everyone else's money. Reducing government spending means government employees lose their jobs. Reducing conflict of interest reduces the opportunity for bribes. Eliminating two-party system causes people to lose their power and influence. Telling hard truths reduces the chance of election. Peace is inconvenient for those who profit from war. Health is inconvenient from those who profit from medical treatments. Health is inconvenient for those who profit from medical treatments. Yeah, which, welcome to the world of mass jab. Okay, that won't get us filtered from YouTube. They'll never decipher that.
Yeah. Let's go, Brandon. I like that. That my name has become like the battle cry now because it's fascinating. Like, I feel like maybe I should use that to I should run for office and be like, on behalf of all Brandons. I don't know.
That's awesome. All right, that's the end of that.
Yeah. So that was a wild ride of lots of tangents and fun stuff, and we should probably wrap it up. Thanks for showing up, Mike, and I was always glad you show up and bring like these wonderful summations to the table from the different chapters, and
happy to have them be called wonderful. That's quite an adjective.
Yeah, no, I love it. Comprehensive, even.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Next week, if we have it in us.
Reading this sortition entry on Everpedia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I need to.
Maybe there's a nice reference to Everpedia there too. That's good.
It's pretty interesting. There's actually a little bit of background on ancient Athens, and then there's examples of sortition used throughout history. Venice, Florence, Switzerland, and India. Venice and Florence being one of the places with real money throughout history. It looks like it corresponds to those times. And Switzerland being the only modern confederacy. So it's quite an unusual list right there.
Seriously.
I don't know how we want to break up the next chapters. Like, corporatism over to wealth versus power is 17 pages or so. But then allocating natural resources is 11 pages. Smart contracts itself is like 17 pages. So we're in this in-between zone of having a little shorter or a little longer.
For next episode?
Yeah. Is corporatism busy and wealth versus power?
I think we can tackle those two.
And just allocating natural resources and smart contracts together would be 30 pages if we did those two together. Or maybe we break up smart contracts into two.
I have essentially all of the next two chapters highlighted.
So we shouldn't overbite. Okay, good. So for next week then, corporatism and wealth versus power. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
No. I have not read the book yet, so I'm still working my way through it, even though I've listened to it. Very good.
This is the monkey that's
Who's
been on
that?
my back this whole time.
Lovely.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
Great.
Lovely. Lovejoy.
Where is it from?
There's a story that this was my mother's monkey, and
Really?
when she was little, her uncle or no, her brother was coming back from a trip somewhere like in Mexico or something, I think, and they said they were bringing her a monkey,
Oh.
and she got really excited that they were bringing a monkey, and it came in the crate. And they picked it up, and she excitedly opened it up, only to find it was like this monkey made of wicker, and she was very sad.
Yeah.
So maybe this will turn into an NFT someday. It scares the hell out of my cats. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
All right, y'all. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Until next week.
it's been real. Oh, should I do the? Well, we'll just end it. All right, here we go.
Like an ending video.
Well, there is, but okay, fine. I'll do it.
Should we beatbox our own musical overlay on this image?
Yeah, go for it, Mike.
Ooh.